He floated on his back, eyes closed, listening to the soft echo of water against stone. He did not hear the door open. He did not hear the footsteps. He only felt it. Two strong arms wrapping around him from behind, pulling him close beneath the surface of the water. He gasped, spinning around, and found himself chest to chest with King Star, whose dark eyes were calm and warm and far too close. "Your Majesty," Savior breathed, heart hammering. The king did not let go. Instead, he pressed his nose just beneath Savior's ear and inhaled slowly, like a man breathing in something he had been starving for. Savior's hands trembled against the king's shoulders. "We can't," he whispered. "You are engaged, my sister." King Star pulled back just enough to look at him. His jaw was tight. His eyes were troubled. Then he lowered his lips to the curve of Savior's neck, soft, deliberate, unhurried, and placed a single quiet kiss there. "Then why?" he murmured against the skin. "Can't I stop thinking about you?" Savior closed his eyes. The water was warm. The king's arms were warmer. And somewhere in the palace, a princess was arranging flowers for a wedding that was already falling apart.
This is Love Tears with Cynthia. If you're coming across this channel for the very first time, please do well to subscribe, like, and share.
The kingdom of Eldora had waited 3 years for its king to choose a bride. King Star was not a man who rushed anything. He was 28, broad-shouldered, quiet in a way that made advisors nervous and poets write sonnets. He ruled with patience. He listened before he spoke. He had turned down 7 matches before his cabinet finally threatened to stop eating until he agreed to one. The chosen bride was Lady Prisca of House Valen, elegant, educated, and by every account lovely. Her portrait had been sent ahead. King Star had studied it for exactly 4 minutes before setting it face down on his desk. "She is beautiful," he told his advisor, Lord Cameron. "She is—" Cameron agreed carefully. "Arrange the escort." What the portrait did not include, what no one thought to mention, was that Lady Prisca would not be traveling alone. Her older brother, Savior, would ride with her. He was her protector, her closest companion, the only family she had left since their father had grown too ill to travel. No one thought this mattered. They were wrong. The royal gates opened on a Tuesday morning, cool and bright. King Star stood on the palace steps in full regalia, crown, cape, composure. He watched the carriage roll through the courtyard. He watched Prisca step out, graceful and golden. He clapped once, politely. Then the second figure stepped down from a horse behind the carriage. Savior dismounted slowly, pushing dark hair from his forehead, squinting against the morning sun. He was tall, not threatening, just present in a way that made a room rearrange itself around him. He looked up at the palace with quiet, curious eyes. And then he looked directly at King Star. The king did not clap again. He forgot to. Lord Cameron leaned in. "Your Majesty, the lady is waiting for your welcome." King Star blinked, cleared his throat, stepped forward with a steady smile. "Lady Prisca, welcome to Eldora." But his eyes, just once, moved back to the man standing behind her. Savior had already looked away. The welcome banquet was everything it was supposed to be. Candles, wine, music that floated through the great hall like smoke. Lady Prisca sat beside the king's empty chair, her hands folded perfectly, her smile practiced and patient. She wore blue. She looked like something painted. King Star was late to his own table. He had stood outside the hall for 6 full minutes, telling himself it was nerves about the engagement, telling himself it had nothing to do with the fact that Savior would be seated 3 chairs away. He walked in. Everyone rose. He sat. Everyone followed. Prisca smiled at him, warm, genuine. "The palace is more beautiful than I imagined, Your Majesty." "You are kind," King Star said. He reached for his wine. Across the table, Savior was listening to one of the lords tell a long story about a horse. He was nodding politely. Then, as if he felt something, he glanced up. His eyes met King Star's. Neither of them looked away immediately. It lasted only a second, 2 maybe, but it was the kind of second that leaves a mark. Savior was the first to drop his gaze. He returned his attention to the Lord and his horse story. King Star set his wine down without drinking from it. Prisca touched his arm gently. "Are you well?" "Yes," he said. "Forgive me. Long day." She accepted this easily. She was gracious like that. Later that evening, as guests moved through the garden, Savior stepped away from the crowd and stood at the stone railing overlooking the river. King Star found himself walking toward him without deciding to. "Your sister is lovely," King Star said, coming to stand beside him. "She is—" Savior didn't look at him. "She's also kind and patient, and has been preparing for this her whole life. I hope she is treated well." It was both a statement and a warning. King Star felt it land. "I intend to treat her with great respect," he said carefully. Savior finally looked at him. Something passed through his eyes, something searching, something quiet. "Good," he said softly. The river moved below them. Neither of them left right away. It started with books. On the fourth night of Savior's stay, King Star sent a servant with a message. "Lord Savior is invited to the royal library. The king wishes to discuss Valda history. He understands you are a scholar of the old kingdoms." It was not untrue. Savior had studied history at the northern academies for 4 years. But he stared at the message for a long moment before folding it quietly and following the servant. The library was warm and amber-lit. King Star was already there, seated at the long reading table, 2 books open before him. "You came?" the king said, looking up. "You sent for me," Savior replied. There was a pause. Then King Star smiled. Not his formal smile, not the one for banquets and ceremonies. This one was smaller and slightly crooked and made Savior uncomfortable in a way he could not name. They talked for 2 hours. History became philosophy. Philosophy became questions about what a man owed the world versus what the world owed him. The candles burned lower. Neither of them seemed to notice. When Savior finally stood to leave, the king stood too. "Come tomorrow," King Star said. "There is a collection here on the South Conquest that I think would interest you." Savior looked at him steadily. "And what about my sister?" "She retires early," the king said. "I am told she is resting well." "That is not what I asked." "A beat." "I know," King Star admitted quietly. Savior should have said no. He understood that clearly, even then. He could feel what was happening the way you feel a tide before it reaches you. The pull, the subtle shift in the air. "One more evening," he said, "for the South Conquests." King Star nodded. But when Savior left and the door closed, the king did not return to his books. He stood very still in the amber light, pressing 2 fingers to his mouth, as if he could already feel something there. The evenings became a ritual. Every night, quietly, Savior made his way to the east corridor. Every night, King Star was waiting. The books were real. They did read, they did discuss, but the space between them at the table grew smaller each time, a shoulder almost touching, fingers reaching for the same page. On the 7th night, the king reached across to point at something to text, and his hand rested over Savior's without either of them acknowledging it. Neither pulled away. Savior stared at the page. His breathing was careful and even. "Star," he said, and then caught himself. "Your Majesty." "Star is fine," the king said quietly. "In here." Savior looked up at him. It was a mistake. He knew at the moment their eyes met, because the look on the king's face was not the look of a man reading history. It was the look of a man who had already made a decision he hadn't yet spoken aloud. "This isn't—" Savior started. "I know," King Star said. "Prisca is—" "I know." "Then why—" The king leaned forward slowly, giving Savior every moment to move, to speak, to stop it. Savior did not move. The kiss was soft, uncertain. It lasted only a breath. When King Star pulled back, Savior had his eyes closed. His jaw was tight. His hand beneath the king's had turned over, fingers lacing quietly together. "This is wrong," Savior whispered. "I know," King Star said for the 3rd time. His voice was low and rough and aching. Savior opened his eyes. "Then why does it feel like the first thing that's made sense since I arrived?" King Star had no answer for that. So instead, he lifted their joined hands and pressed his lips to Savior's knuckles. And they stayed in the amber light, long past the hour the candles should have been put out. Prisca was not a foolish woman. She had been raised in a house of diplomats. She understood the art of watching without appearing to watch. She could read a room the way others read letters, and she had been reading this one for 2 weeks. The king was courteous, always courteous. He walked with her in the garden, answered her questions, attended every meal. But he did not look at her the way the portraits of royal couples showed husbands looking at wives. He looked at her the way a man looks at a duty he respects. She tried not to let it sting, but it was the evenings that truly troubled her. She found her brother one afternoon in the courtyard, watching the stable hands exercise the horses. Savior. He turned and smiled at her, warm, familiar. Prisca, you look tired. I am tired. She sat beside him on the bench, of being ignored. His smile dimmed slightly. The king has been attentive. He has been polite, she corrected gently. There is a difference. She paused. He lights up for other things. Other conversations. I just don't know what. Savior went very still. She looked at him. You two speak often. In the evenings. He invited me to the library. History discussions. His voice was measured. I can decline if it bothers you. It doesn't bother me, she said slowly, watching his face. I just wonder why he comes alive in a library and grows quiet beside me at dinner. Savior looked back at the horses. Give him time, Prisca. Arranged matches take time. She was quiet for a moment. Then, brother, look at me. He did. Her eyes were soft but searching. She was looking for something, and from the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, she wasn't sure she wanted to find it. Is there something I should know? She asked. No, Savior said. The word came too quickly. Prisca folded her hands in her lap and said nothing more. But that night, she did not sleep. It had started as a warning. Savior had gone to the east pool to think, to breathe, to remind himself of every reason this needed to stop. Prisca's face, his family's name, the crown that sat on Star's head, and the weight it carried. He told himself he would stay for 20 minutes, then go to his room. Then, tomorrow, tell the king that the evening visits were finished. He did not hear the door. He did not hear the footsteps. He only felt the arms, warm, steady, pulling him back against the chest he had grown dangerously familiar with. He spun around. Star. Sure. The king's forehead dropped to his. Their breath mingled in the steam. I followed you. I know I shouldn't have. You need to stop. I know. This is not fair to her. I know, Savior. His voice broke slightly on the name. I know all of it. I've said it to myself every night. And then I see you across a room and I lose the argument every time. Savior pressed his palms flat against the king's chest. Not pushing, just feeling. I keep lying to myself. Savior said quietly. I keep saying it's nothing. Is it nothing? Star whispered. The steam rose around them. The water was still. No, Savior admitted. Just one word. But it moved through the air between them like something sacred. King Star cupped his face with both hands. Gently. The way you hold something you're afraid of breaking. I am falling in love with you, he said plainly. I don't know what to do with that, but I will not pretend it isn't true. Savior's breath shook. His eyes were bright. This could destroy everything, he whispered. I know. Then why? Star kissed him before he could finish the sentence. Slow, deep, like a man saying something words couldn't carry. When they separated, Savior's hands had moved from his chest to the back of his neck. Neither of them mentioned Prisca's name for the rest of the night. It was not planned. Prisca had not meant to go to the king's chambers. She had only wanted to find her brother. He had missed dinner, and the servant said he had gone toward the east wing, and she had followed out of simple worry. She did not knock loudly enough. Or perhaps the latch did not catch the night before, and the door swung open too easily. She did not understand immediately what she was seeing. The fire was low. The room was dim. Her brother and the king were on the bed, fully clothed. She would note later, they were fully clothed. Savior's head on King Star's chest, the king's arm wrapped around him, both of them speaking in the quiet murmur of people who feel completely safe. They looked peaceful. They looked like they were in love. The sound Prisca made was small, a breath, a caught syllable. Both men turned. The silence that followed lasted only a second, but it felt like a season. Prisca, Savior was already moving, already sitting up. She stepped back. Her hand found the doorframe. Her face, it was not rage, not yet. It was the expression of someone watching something fall that cannot be caught. "How long?" she said. Her voice was very quiet. "Prisca, please." "How long, Savior?" He stood. He opened his mouth. He closed it. King Star rose slowly from bed. "Lady Prisca, this is not. I take full responsibility." "Don't," she said. Her eyes had gone glassy. "Don't say something careful and royal right now. Just don't." She looked at her brother. He held her gaze. He did not look away, and she hated him a little for that, for not even having the kindness to be a coward about it. "I trusted you," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away. Her footsteps echoed down the stone corridor, and somewhere across the palace, a door opened, and her father's closest man was awake. By morning, the palace had changed. Word travels fast in places where power lives. By the time the sun rose over Eldora, for the king's senior advisors were already gathered in the council room, their faces arranged into the specific expression of men holding catastrophe at arm's length. Lord Aldrich of House Valen, Prisca and Savior's father, who had made the journey despite his illness, arrived at the palace before breakfast. He was not a large man. He did not need to be. He stood in the king's throne room, and his fury filled every corner of it. "My son," he said, his voice thick, "has dishonored this house." Savior stood beside the king. He did not look away from his father, but his hands were clasped behind his back to hide their trembling. "Lord Aldrich," King Star began, "my daughter was promised a marriage." Aldrich cut in. "Instead, she was humiliated. Inside your walls, under your roof, by your conduct." The word landed like a stone. The advisors shifted. Lord Cameron stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the cabinet strongly urges." "I know what the cabinet urges," Star said flatly. "The engagement must be honored. The alliance." "The engagement," Prisca's father said, his eyes fixed on Savior, "is destroyed. Because of him." Savior absorbed this without flinching. His jaw was tight. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "If you send my son from this palace in disgrace," Aldrich said, "I will accept that as the king's verdict. But do not ask me to call him my son after today." The silence that followed was the kind that reshapes things. Savior closed his eyes briefly. King Star looked at the man he loved, the exhaustion in his face, the quiet dignity he was holding together with both hands, and felt something settle hard and clear in his chest. He turned to Lord Cameron. "Leave us," he said. "Your Majesty, the cabinet. Leave us." They gave him 3 days. 3 days to restore the engagement, to send Savior away, to preserve the alliance, the cabinet's trust, the kingdom's opinion of its king. 3 days, and on the other side of it, a choice that would define the rest of his reign. On the second night, King Star sat alone on the stone floor of the private pool room, with his back against the wall. The water was still. The candles were few. Savior sat across from him. "You should let me go," Savior said. "I mean it, Star. I have thought about this clearly, and I love you," King Star said. Savior stopped. "Not carefully. Not in the small, manageable way I thought I was capable of." The king's voice was steady but raw. "I love you in a way that has made me a worse king this past month and a more honest man. I know what that costs. I know what I'm being asked to give up." Savior's throat moved. "It is not only what you give up, it's what they will say, what they will do. The alliance breaks. Your cabinet will." "My cabinet serves this kingdom. So do I." Star leaned forward. "But I will not spend my life in a marriage built on a lie, pretending to be something I am not, beside a woman who deserves a man who actually loves her. That is not fair to Prisca. That is not fair to anyone." Savior looked at him for a long moment. "My father has disowned me," he said softly. "I have nothing to bring you." "You brought me yourself," Star said. "In this palace full of mirrors and politics and performance, you were just yourself. That is not nothing. That is everything." The water was still. The candles were low. Savior crossed the space between them and pressed his forehead against Star's temple. "If you choose this," he whispered, There's no going back. I know, King Star said. He had never been more certain of anything. On the third morning, King Star walked into the council chamber without being summoned. He stood before his cabinet. 7 men, all older than him, all with the polished expressions of people waiting for an apology. He gave them something else. I will not restore the engagement to Lady Prisca, he said clearly. She deserves a husband who loves her, and I am not that man. I will offer House Valen a formal written apology and compensation for the broken arrangement. I will take full responsibility, publicly, if necessary. The fault is mine. The room erupted. He let it. He waited for the noise to thin. This kingdom needs stability, Lord Cameron said. It needs an heir. This kingdom needs a king who governs with integrity. Star replied, That is what I intend to be. He paused. Lord Savior of House Valen will remain in Eldra as my personal counsel. In time, should the law allow and the people accept it, something more. It was not a fairy tale announcement. There were no cheers. 2 advisors left their chairs and did not return, but the other 5 stayed. Prisca left on a gray morning with a carriage, 3 trunks, and her dignity held perfectly in place. She did not look back at the palace gates. She did cry once when she was 3 miles down the road. But she was also quietly relieved to not spend her life being not quite chosen. She was young. She would find someone whose eyes followed her the way her brothers followed that king. She did not forgive Savior immediately, but she wrote to him, eventually, a year later. 1 page. I don't understand it yet, but I believe you didn't choose this to hurt me. I'm trying to hold on to that. Savior read it 4 times and kept it in his coat pocket for weeks. The kingdom talked. Of course it did. There were pamphlets, rumors, whispers in markets and meeting halls. Some were cruel, some were curious. But King Star governed well, better, perhaps, than before, clearer, less performed. And in the East Wing, in the amberlit library where it had all quietly begun, 2 men sat at a long table with their shoulders touching, reading the same page, building something slow and real and entirely their own. Not perfect, not without cost, but chosen every single day on purpose. And that, in the end, was its own kind of crown.
Some love stories follow the rules. This one didn't, and that's exactly why it mattered. King Star and Savior didn't get a perfect ending. They got a real one, built on honesty, courage, and the quiet decision to stop pretending. They lost things, they paid a price, but they chose each other anyway, every single day on purpose. And sometimes that is the most radical love story of all. If this story moved you, kindly like, subscribe, and share to others.